Welcome back to the Underground Football Podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything NFL football from underground, alongside my co-host Jack Priller and today's special guest, Mr. Macho Switcher. I'm Mike Maynard, and we're going to jump right into today's episode, which is on the 2022 Jacksonville Jaguars. We're going to preview their season, preview each position one by one. So happy to be here. Get ready for, some Jaguars insight. Priller, how we feeling today though? How we feeling about the Jaguars? What are your thoughts?
Honestly, I'm pretty excited about this episode. Getting a new special guest on the show. It's going to be an interesting episode, I think, to really dive in on this team.
And yeah, speaking of that special guest, Macho, how you feeling today? You excited to be here? What's your thoughts so far on, being on the podcast?
I mean, it feels great to be here, but I'm still a Jaguars fan, so it's depressing nonstop. There's not much ever going on. You have low hopes for every season. Nothing's happening. It's just depressing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that, but we'll get into maybe some good parts of this team that has been, like you said, struggling as of late, but on the up and up. So, we'll jump into the 2022 Jaguars season, which wasn't what they were hoping for. Going 3-14, fourth in the AFC South, getting the number one pick overall in the draft. The 1 year of Urban Meyer's tenure with the Jaguars obviously didn't work out. He's now gone, and Doug Peterson has come in to take over his place. So hopefully he's able to, turn things around, steer the ship in the right direction, and get things going for this upcoming season. So if you guys are ready, we can jump into the quarterback spot and start going, with this roster.
Yeah, for
So
sure. Let's get
starting
into it.
off, the Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback one going into 2022 will be none other than the sophomore Trevor Lawrence, coming off a maybe below expected rookie season. He didn't have necessarily the best season, not what people were thinking out of the number one pick, but I think rough situation, rough head coach, like I just talked about a little bit. Um, this guy's going to be looking to turn things around, and I think he's got the athletic ability to do so. And I think another year in the NFL will only help him getting his main guy back in the running back room, who we'll get into in a second here. But I think Trevor Lawrence should have a much better season than he did here in 2021 upcoming. But it was a rough start to his career. But super young guy, like I said, rookie last year. It's his second season, 22 years old only, and we all know, we've seen Trevor Lawrence since high school. So this guy, he's a winner. He can steer this ship around, like I, said they're hoping for. I think Trevor Lawrence will be that guy to lead this team to brighter pastures. So, Priller, what are your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence, and his outlook going into his second season here?
Trevor Lawrence, obviously, like you mentioned, wasn't he didn't perform the greatest this last season, but I like to bring up the part of when we talked about QBs on our podcast. Trevor Lawrence is like a perfect build, obviously being 6'6". I mean, he kind of has that build as a QB, strong arm. He's got really good potential. I think that's what the Jaguars see in him. Obviously, being so young, 22 years old, like you mentioned. Obviously, he's up and coming. He's obviously the franchise QB for a long time. And yeah, I mean, I would kind of just want to hit hard on not doing too great last season. But you mentioned that he could turn it around. I mean, he is a winner. We all know this. And yeah, I mean, I only see you can only go up from where he's at right now. I mean, 3,600 passing yards this season, not the greatest, but not the worst. But you mentioned his bad coach that he had, Urban Meyer. Obviously, that had something to do with it. When you have a head coach that isn't the greatest, that definitely can steer your ship.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head of the nail there with his frame being 6'6", being a big guy. Has a great arm, like you said. He has great pocket presence. This is a guy that has all the tools. He just kind of needs to, have the supporting cast around him and put it all together. So, Macho, what are your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence? I know last year you were hoping for a little bit more maybe, but I know you're a big fan of him and still looking for him to turn things around. So, what are your thoughts going into 2022?
I mean, like, you can't expect much. Our team's fucking awful still. Like, it's our number one receiver is Christian Kirk, who's at best a number two on like any other team. It's just like there's not much to work with. Our top tight ends is Evan Ingram, who drops every fucking pass that comes to him. I mean, Laviska Shenault is the only upside on this team I see. I mean, we got rid of DJ Chark, which I thought was the bright side of our team, but they didn't want to re-sign him. There's just no weapons around him. He doesn't really have much to throw to. And he's got Doug Peterson, who I don't think is that good of a coach. I didn't think it was a good hire, but yeah.
I mean, I think you're shitting on Doug Peterson a little bit here, but you got to give him more credit than Urban Meyer deserves, and he should be a step up. And maybe we're not looking at Trevor Lawrence, becoming the best quarterback in the league, but I think me and Prilla are both mentioning the small things that they've done to make, the situation around him a little bit better. DJ Chark was a loss, definitely a big one, and maybe his number one target, but Christian Kirk comes in, and like I pointed out, Travis Etienne, being his guy from Clemson, I think he'll be a big guy to have back. With Trevor Lawrence, having all these guys that he's not really comfortable with still, and bringing in all these new guys, but Etienne's a guy that he's been with for a while, and he'll be able to, get that chemistry back with him pretty quickly, I think. So I think, maybe we're not looking at a complete turnaround from this past season for Trevor Lawrence, but I think he's definitely the bright spot of this team right now, and he definitely showed flashes of being, a top tier quarterback in the league. He just, like we kind of pointed out, he needs that supporting cast to kind of step it up around him. And some of these guys are young, like you mentioned Laviska Shenault too. Like these are young guys that could maybe produce a little bit more than they've been in the past. So I don't know. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is an interesting one. Hopefully
Oh,
he
I
can.
mean, Trevor definitely has the highest potential out of anyone we've seen recently. He has the highest. He has the highest floor. Like at worst, he's gonna be like I don't know, fucking Jared Goff. The highest he could be Peyton Manning. That's the thing. Like he's built to be in the NFL. He's
Yeah,
the
for
most
sure.
talented. Like there's nothing around him is a problem right now. I mean, our running back room is great. Our receivers are okay. I mean, our third best receiver. I'm looking at the depth chart on ESPN right now. It's our third is Jamal Agnew, who's a safety. It's there's nothing much.
Yeah, I
I
mean, we'll get
mean,
into each position individually, but I think it's definitely you can't really expect a team to go from the number one pick to being, superb or even average at that point, or to mention. But I think this team took a step up, maybe not a huge step up, but a step in the right direction with some of these new signings and Christian Kirk and Zay Jones coming into wide receiver room. I mean, we'll get into these guys, but I think overall that it should be a little bit better of a situation for Trevor. Maybe not, what you're hoping for um, out of the front
I
office to
mean,
really surround him with great talent, but it's a step in the
yeah, I
right
mean, for
direction.
sure, his arm talent's like something that's it's just like once in a generation.
Yeah, you can't teach it.
Yeah, I mean, and then you have someone who's like CJ Beathard behind him, who's just a high IQ player, who can. I mean, he's not too old of a player, but he can still teach him some shit.
Yeah, and he's been around, so he's bounced around a couple teams. He's been with Kyle Shanahan in that 49ers offense, and he's been running some weird trick plays and stuff. So he can definitely help, in some ways. So I guess yeah, we'll move on to the backups here. I mean, we talked a good amount about Trevor Lawrence. Um, super solid quarterback. You're not looking for anybody to replace him there for a while. So he's super great. We'll jump in. CJ Beathard, like you touched on, as the backup. He's a solid guy. I
I,
mean, he's decent backup. He's not going to see playing time. I mean, this is his team, so CJ will be, that coach from the sidelines maybe, and then you got a couple more guys in the QB room, but this is Trevor's team mainly. We don't really need to go too in depth on these guys. I mean, barring an injury to Trevor Lawrence, he's not going to come off the field. So
I mean, our number three quarterback right now is Jake Luton. I don't know why we kept him. I don't know why we still have him on the team. He doesn't do much. He played in the preseason game. I'm pretty sure he got outplayed by our fourth string who we just cut, and there just was no reason to keep him. I think he's just a dog shit player who does nothing else to do. I don't think he's very good. I don't know why he's playing, but
I mean,
Jaguar season.
it's early. They could always cut him before the season starts. These preseason rosters are much bigger than, the 53-man roster that you have to go into the regular season with. So you could definitely see, some of these guys in the quarterback room get cut because they're gonna go with their guy and Trevor, and these guys aren't really here unless there's a big problem with Trevor getting an injury or something. So these guys are going to be probably either on the verge of getting cut or off the team, starting by week one. Um, so we'll jump into the running backs now. We touched on, the main quarterbacks in this quarterback room. Like we said, Trevor Lawrence's team. So to jump in with the running backs, you have the one-two punch of James Robinson and Travis Etienne. I think James Robinson, is a little bit more, you know what you're going to get out of him. Etienne's a little bit more polarizing. You don't really know what to expect out of him. He hasn't played yet, so James Robinson, you're getting a solid back there, powerful guy. Get him in between the tackles. Not really great like in the receiving game necessarily, but that's what ETN's for. ETN's that quicker guy, more agile on his feet,
I
and
mean,
great at getting open underneath, and even down the field a little bit. So these guys will be kind of that thunder and lightning little duo that you got here, with a couple of these other teams that me and Priller have gone into. But yeah, these are your main two guys. Your third guy, Snoop Connor, the rookie this year, that, he may see some time, but fifth round pick probably isn't going to be getting the bulk of
I'm
the action here. So, Priller, what are your thoughts here on, let's go with the one-two punch in ETN and Robinson. What are your initial thoughts on what these two are going to be capable of this season?
Honestly, I'm kind of with you on the ETN play. I mean, like, yeah, obviously he's a polarizing player, and no one really knows what to expect out of him. I mean, first round pick. Obviously, I'm curious to see how this connection to Trevor Lawrence is really going to affect his game and how it's going to really elevate him to an NFL tier running back. But I did want to mention that I mean James Robinson is not a slouch in the passing game when it comes to being a decent pass back, catching like receiving back out of the backfield for Trevor Lawrence. I mean like he didn't do horrible, but he's obviously not putting up like insane numbers that you would want to see out of like a pass catching back. I mean he was kind of thrown in there last year before Etienne was on the team, where he kind of just had to do his own thing. I mean, obviously, I'll let Macho get more into talking about running backs because he might obviously know a little bit more about these. But I mean, yeah, I like this duo that the Jaguars have put together, and I really think that it's honestly going to go up from here. I mean, as long as James Robinson can stay healthy, I think this duo right here could be a pretty good team to keep your eye on.
Yeah, I mean, you got
yeah,
to
I mean,
mention ETN staying healthy too, though. He was out all last season, so it's not just James Robinson. Both these guys dealt with some injuries a little bit, but they should be good to start the season at least, which should be pretty nice. So yeah, Macho, what are your thoughts on these two guys, this one-two punch here in Jacksonville?
I'm gonna talk about James Robinson quick. So his injury is a big conversation for us because I mean, he's just consistent. He hits the hole every time. He gets 5 yards every time. He's fucking amazing. James Robinson's the bright side for the Jaguars every year. Him and Josh Allen have always been consistent. But like, he got injured. I think it was Achilles. It might have been Achilles. I'm not sure. I can't remember the injury. But he's been practicing already. And if I don't remember the injury right now, you're gonna have to check
Is
back
it
on that. But
Achilles?
it was Achilles, but yes, I mean he's already back less than a year, like practicing. I don't think it's full pads yet, but he's running, and everyone's been saying that he looks faster than he was before. ETN, like I hated the pick when they drafted him. It was just like we already have James Robinson. Why the fuck are we getting another thing? But then I started thinking about more. It's like almost like that Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram punch. You
Exactly.
have to be able to, like a little elusive than someone just run through a fucking brick wall.
Yeah, and I think
It's,
ETN will get some work maybe out of the slot, as a receiver if they want to have both of these guys on the field at the same time. I think that's a great idea as well. So I think ETN, at the time definitely didn't look like necessarily a great pick to draft a guy at a position where your team had a lot of weaknesses, and that was one
yeah,
of the strong
especially when the
points was
one
running
bright
back.
spot when the one bright spot was our running back the year before.
Yeah, it was a little strange, but that was maybe Urban Meyer had a say in that. We don't know. So moving forward with that, maybe Trevor Lawrence had a say in that because he wanted to bring his guy in. I mean, I think it should help having that connection there. We saw Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase with the Bengals this past season. That connection in college really carried over straight to the NFL, and these guys, were able to light the league on fire. So I'm not saying we're going to see that necessarily out of Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, but these guys have a little connection here, and Etienne's going to be, catching a lot of passes for these guys. So I think having chemistry with your number one target. Maybe he's not your number one receiver, but I think he's going to be getting the ball a lot from Trevor. So having that chemistry should be super valuable. And James Robinson, like you said, he's one of the more solid backs in the league. You know exactly what you're getting from him, and that's a top tier running back. He's going to hit the hole hard every time. And I didn't mean to say he was a slouch in the passing game. I just think he's going to focus more on those between the tackles runs. Second and two, third and two, you need a couple yards, you hand him the rock and he's going to get there. Where ETN's going to be that guy that you're getting outside the tackles and get him in space, get the ball in his hands to make people miss and break them off for big runs. So these two guys should be great. Snoop Connor, you bring in the fifth round this year out of Ole Miss. He's going to be your rotational guy that'll come in and relieve both of these guys whenever they need a break. But I think your main two here are going to be obviously James Robinson and Travis Etienne.
Well, it's if they can stay healthy because they don't stay healthy. But yeah, no, I definitely agree because like James Robinson's highly underrated in the pass game. He does have a lot of problems. He does drop the ball, but I mean, he's a fucking running back. Like you can't expect. Like Travis Etienne's comparison was Alvin Kamara in the draft. Like
Yes.
they knew like he's a good pass catcher, but James Robinson's still above average. He can get the job done. Snoop Connor is a stupid fucking draft pick. I mean,
I mean, it's a
there's no
fifth round
reason.
pick. It's not like terrible.
Still, we have two good solid running backs. We had a good third. I can't remember his name.
Injury prone though. That's why I feel like that's why they kind of
Even
did
the
that.
third string was just a solid dude. He was just like he was just like consistent. Like you just knew what you were gonna get. He was a power back, and I don't know why we would get another power back. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
In case the power back
I
that's
mean,
been injured gets injured again.
I mean, I
yeah, I
guess
mean
that's
still the
that's
Jaguars.
just a little bit of a weird like fifth round pick. Like, there's been a ton of great fifth round picks that have come through the league. So maybe you go for a guy
I
with
mean,
at a bigger position of need, but they obviously liked Snoop Connor and went with him. So we'll see how much he gets in the games, but it could be rough for him getting a lot of playing time with these two guys.
James Robinson looks very well in the videos I've seen. I think he's gonna be back probably around. I think they're projecting him week 4, but like he's already in full sprints and like
Yeah, I mean, I have a report here that he's questionable, not in line to play in Friday's preseason game against the Browns. So that's like super, good news to hear that he's questionable for a preseason game. Going into the early weeks, he should be, pretty good to go if he's already just a questionable guy, not even, out necessarily guaranteed. He's got a chance at playing on Friday. So, I think definitely you'll probably see James Robinson super early on in the season, which will be a great addition to this offense as he's mainly your strong point here. Like you said, he's the bright spot of I guess Trevor Lawrence would be your brightest spot, but other than that, I mean James
doesn't
Robinson's been
tell me
super
that though,
solid.
but James Robinson had James Robinson. I don't know how he went undrafted. Still amazes me to this day. I mean, most yards, and I think it was FCS history. It might have just been Illinois State. I'm not sure, but like he was just a phenomenal dude who went under the radar. We picked him up, and he's been nothing but amazing.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll move on from running backs now. We touched on your main guys here, and we'll hop in with the wide receivers. I guess your wide receiver one's going to be a new guy in Christian Kirk, who got a pretty big contract. I mean, it's got it has that out where the Jaguars can get out of it pretty early on, but it's listed as a 4-year, $72 million contract. I mean, they probably won't end up paying him all of that. But regardless, he's brought in here to be your wide receiver one for Trevor Lawrence, and he's been pretty solid as the wide receiver two in Arizona behind DeAndre Hopkins. This past season was his best season, almost getting 1,000 yards at 982. So a pretty good season. I mean, maybe you're not super excited about him being your wide receiver one, but he's a solid guy to have. He's not gonna hurt your team, and I think with the rotation of these guys, it's not gonna be a terrible receiving core. But I think you don't really have your alpha number one receiver that's gonna week in week out produce at a high level. So Christian Kirk as your number one is iffy, but he's gonna be solid overall.
I mean, the one thing that I can give him is that when he was in Arizona, he was behind. I think he was there with AJ Green and DeAndre Hopkins.
Well,
He
AJ
was number
Green was
three.
just here this past season, so
I mean, he didn't have a time to shine really. He was always the number two. Didn't have much time to shine. And that contract, thank you for adjusting that. None of the money is confirmed. I mean, like we don't owe him anything. Like he has to prove himself this year. That's all he has to do. He has to prove himself, and from the training camps, he looks good. But like he has to prove himself. That's the only reason like we sign him. So that contract is like next year we're gonna be paying him a shit ton of money if he performs. But I still think Marvin Jones is our number one. I don't think it's gonna be Christian Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't really know if you're gonna have a necessarily like one number one receiver. I think these guys will all be getting a similar workload. Maybe one guy will have a little bit more playing time than the others, but I think overall it's going to be pretty similar throughout the wide receiver depth chart of having, similar amount of targets, similar amount of playing time. But yeah, you touched on Marvin Jones. We'll hop into him a little bit. He's kind of, your bigger bodied receiver, jump ball guy, contested catch guy. Um, you know, we're maybe hoping for him to work a little bit better in the red zone target type stuff here in this past season, but he
Why
can
we
work on
signed him.
that. What was
I
that?
think I mean that's why we signed him. He also underperformed, but our O line last year was going through a lot of injuries, which obviously we'll look into that later. But I mean, Marvin Jones last year, DJ Shark was injured the entire year. Marvin Jones was very fucking good. He was getting contested balls everywhere. He just performs well. He was consistent. Didn't have many drops, which we had that with Laviska. But like Marvin Jones was consistent. You knew what you were gonna get from him. He wasn't gonna drop the ball. He made some good contested catches. And yeah, I mean Marvin Jones was sick. I mean he was fun as hell to watch.
Yeah, I think he's a super solid guy to have, in rotation for your number two receiver. He's a great guy. He's getting up there in age a little bit, 32 years old, so maybe he's, losing that athletic ability necessarily, but like you said, super strong hands. He's going to catch everything his way, and that contested catch game is super integral to his production. So maybe you'd like to see him get a little bit more of that, touchdown upside that he has with those contested catches in the red zone. But I think super solid guy having at number two. So Prilly, what are your thoughts on Christian Kirk and Marvin Jones being kind of that one and two here in Jacksonville?
Honestly, I wasn't really a big fan of Christian Kirk going to Jacksonville. I was a guy like right when I seen that notification pop on my phone, Christian Kirk getting paid like 72 million over 4 years. I was like kind of blown away. I was like, why? Just why would you pay this guy? Obviously, we kind of touched on the contract not being completely. I just don't really think that like those numbers should even be talked about when talking about a guy like Christian Kirk. I mean, he hasn't obviously he's been the number two wide receiver on the Arizona, but yeah, I mean, he really hasn't performed like you would want a guy that's getting paid $72 million. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, none of it's guaranteed, but he's just not really. He hasn't performed or shown that like he could even make $72 million. You know what I mean? Like he hasn't really shown that he could make that. So Christian Kirk, I don't really like. I mean, obviously as like a number two wide receiver, he's obviously not a bad. He's kind of like a solid number two wide receiver. But yeah, that's really all I could say on Christian Kirk. But Marvin Jones, I actually really do like him. I mean, you guys kind of touched on him. He is a very consistent wide receiver in the NFL. And I mean, other than this last year, kind of had a drop off. But I mean, we that last season, we'll call it like a fluke or whatever. I mean, 3 wins, obviously not what you're looking for, but you weren't having the most productive season. But I mean, he still put up solid numbers, almost putting up 1,000 yards. I mean, that's like decent as a wide receiver on a team that's only getting 3 wins. I mean, you can't really ask for much. But yeah, I mean, you guys kind of touched on it, a sure-handed target. That's kind of what you're wanting in a number two wide receiver. Obviously, he's getting up there in age. You mentioned that, Mike. But I mean, if he's still performing and being consistent, I mean, what's the big deal about getting old? So that's kind of my 2 cents on these two guys. Obviously, not too big on Christian Kirk, but Marvin Jones can't have enough to say about him.
Yeah, and I think Marvin Jones' play style is one that you don't worry about that age factor as much. If he was, the guy like let's, call Tyreek Hill out here. Like if he's playing like Tyreek Hill, you're worried a lot more as he gets older and older and older, but he doesn't play like Tyreek Hill. He's that jump ball guy that doesn't need to use his speed or
Oh,
his
he's
athleticism, but he just needs to
in the
use his
way.
hands and his smart ball skills. So he can use that age, or what am I trying to say? The age isn't as big a factor for Marvin Jones as it would be for necessarily another receiver with a different type of skill set.
No, he's
Yeah,
gonna use his body to put himself in position to catch a ball, which is just an IQ play.
Exactly.
yeah,
So
that's where the age comes into
you don't need
factor.
to be a super young guy. So we'll hop in here at the number three, I guess, wide receiver spot. I think after the main two, it's kind of going to be a little bit of a rotation as well. They brought in Zay Jones, who I think is probably going to be the number three here.
I think
Brought him in on a 3-year, $24 million contract. And he's been a little bit shaky, a little bit different. Depends on what year you look at, but he's when he's gotten decent playing time, he's looked pretty good. I mean, he's not gonna wow you or anything, but he's got pretty good speed to get downfield and kind of be that deep threat for your team to keep the defense honest. So Zay Jones as your third guy, you're not really expecting a ton out of him, but he's a solid guy to have. And they also have, Macho touched on him a little bit. Laviska Shenault, is a guy that has a lot of upside still, um, but like you said, has maybe a little bit of a drop issue. But he's a great athlete and can really make people miss at a high level. So
I
he's
touched on
super
drop
young
issue
too.
real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so basically the drop issue in college, he had no issues with it. Had very little drops, but once he got to the NFL, his first season he was great. I think his first 3 games, he didn't. I don't think he got brought to the ground once. I mean, he's a Walmart brand Debo Samuel's, which I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound great saying, but like he's a big body that we use at running back. But I think last year it was literally just nerves getting in the way.
Yeah, I think he, with a better coach around him and Doug Peterson. Now, I know you weren't super high on Doug Peterson, but I think it's a better guy to have mentoring this guy than Urban Meyer. So I think Laviska should have an uptick in usage, and I think Doug Peterson's shown the ability to be a little bit funky with his play calls. I'm pulling out the obvious, but the Philly special in the Super Bowl. Most teams aren't running stuff like that, so that's funky stuff. And Laviska Shenault, he might need some funky stuff to get the ball in his hands and make people miss. And like you said, he's very similar to a guy like Debo Samuel. When you get the ball in his hands, he's dangerous and he can take anything to the house. So get this guy the ball as much as you can. And hope to have a little bit of a better season. 0 touchdowns for him this past season. You're definitely looking for an increase in that. So I think there's no reason he can't improve on that. And I think really Laviska Shenault and Travis Etienne should be kind of similar players overall. Both quick guys that can make people miss, but Laviska's obviously that bigger body, like you said. He can run dudes over if he needs to. 6'1", 227 pounds. But both of these guys are super young targets for Trevor Lawrence. They can grow with him and create that chemistry. But Laviska's a great guy to have as your, number three, number four, whatever you want to call him, receiver, just because he has a lot of upside still in his game.
I mean, I think he's gonna end up being our number 2 this year. I think last year was just kind of him just getting the nerves out of the way. I mean, because he went to Colorado, which is a small school. He had a great rookie year. I think he had a couple injuries. I mean, like Zay Jones, like I don't know much about Zay Jones. I really don't. I didn't pay attention to that signing. I thought it was a weird signing. I actually did like the Christian Kirk sign, which is an unpopular opinion, but I think Laviska is set up to be our he's a solid number 2. I don't think he'll ever be a number 1, but he's a solid number 2.
So you saying Laviska is going to be the number two behind Christian Kirk, implying that Marvin Jones might see a little bit of a,
No,
fall off in usage? Or are you saying Marvin Jones would be the one?
Marvin Jones will be the number 1. I don't think Christian Kirk will turn out. I don't think he'll be after the season.
Yeah, I mean that's
I,
fair, and I think the contract that they gave him kind of shows you that they aren't necessarily super confident in him taking that step to be that number one receiver. Now we haven't seen him, be in an offense where he has the opportunity to be the number one, so maybe with the opportunity that he has, he'll show something. I mean, he's a young guy too. Christian Kirk's only 25 years old, so we could see him kind of grow into a number one receiver. But I definitely think that the Jaguars aren't guaranteeing anything, and I think that contract, with the out that they have, shows that they're not necessarily guaranteeing anything, even though they signed him to what looks like on paper a huge contract. It's not necessarily all there until the Jaguars want it to be there. So they're gonna wait and see. And I think if Christian Kirk pays off and he becomes, a dominant number one, then you pay him like he is, and if he doesn't, then you let him go. So I think that's a pretty good situation there. And he definitely has the upside, though. I think Kirk has the capability of being the number one. It's just only time will tell. We'll see what he does.
I mean, like from what I've seen from, I mean, training camp, which is obviously right now it's 7-on-7. The big name that's been popping out has been Laviska Shenault and Laquan Treadwell. Those have been the two names that have popped out the most. And I mean, I haven't heard anything from Christian Kirk, Marvin Jones. I mean, I don't know. It just might just be the post I'm seeing, but I mean, he's an old man. He's getting like 30 something. He's
Hmm.
aging. He doesn't have many years left. Laviska's young. I mean, he does have an injury problem. He is very injury prone, but I mean, he has a chance to really shine, especially in like a good offense where we have a consistent coach who's not caking our kickers in the leg.
Yeah, that's definitely going to help this team a lot, and I think we'll see a very different Jaguars team overall, but a very different offense. Doug Peterson's an offensive guy, so we'll see a very different scheme here and a very different play style for a lot of these guys. But you did touch on Laquan Treadwell, excuse me, but I'd like to touch on him really quick. So he's a former first round pick back in 2016 that just really, really never panned out for,
Yeah,
he played with
Vikings.
the Vikings for the first 4 years of his career, and, highest receiving total was 302 yards and one touchdown. So that's not great, but he moves on to Atlanta, has two touchdowns on six receptions. So I guess, using him in the red zone a little bit more, and then had his best season this past year in Jacksonville with 434 yards and a touchdown. So you're not expecting a ton out of Laquan Treadwell starting out, but as a former first round pick, he definitely has the capability of, putting on a show and really showing why he deserved to be that first round pick for the Vikings. But, you know, I think it'll be a big rotation overall here for the wide receivers. I think we'll kind of see as the first couple weeks go by, we'll kind of be able to tell pretty early on who's going to be, your number one, number two, number three. I think right now it's a little bit more unknown than it will be in, a matter of a couple weeks.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. I mean, Laquan, like we signed him last year to like a quick deal, and he performed great for us. I mean, he showed up. He did a good job. He wasn't great. He wasn't bad. He was just average.
Yeah, and you weren't expecting a ton out of him. So to get what you got out of him was pretty solid.
That was surprising. It really was. It was
Yeah.
just like it was nice. It was a little like pop out of the box, out of nowhere. It was just a good sight to see. Especially like we had such a bad season last year. I mean, we just obviously we're about to get in Jamal Agnew. Like we had a safety at wide receiver.
Yeah,
It,
Jamal Agnew's kind of like basically your returner type. Like he's going to be, returning kicks and punts, but also, in those gadget plays on offense, he might come in and get a little bit of touches. But I don't think, I think with the guys that are in here on the depth chart in front of him, I think he's going to have a lesser role in this offense this coming year. I think ETN being here now, and I think Laviska Shenault taking a step up possibly, they'll kind of take over that gadgety type, get the ball in his hands and see what happens type of role. So I think, um, a guy like Jamal Agnew is gonna see a lesser role this upcoming season. I mean, like I said, only time will tell. We'll be able to tell pretty early on who Doug Peterson's really liking, but I think it'll be a big rotation. So, Priller, we haven't heard from you in a bit. What do you think of the rotation that's after, your top couple guys here? What do you think about this wide receiver group here in Jacksonville?
I kind of like these. I mean, they have a pretty deep room in my opinion. I mean, they kind of got obviously Macho's touching on Laquan. I honestly, obviously, what I've heard and looked into about him, he obviously seems like a pretty like decent, solid guy. Obviously, brought him in off of nothing. Kind of signed him just to kind of look, just see what would happen. Honestly, he outperformed probably what they thought. And I am in kind of like agreement with you guys. Laviska obviously is probably this bright side for this wide receiver group. I mean, only being 23 years old, definitely has room to grow into a wide receiver. And I definitely could see him moving up, how Macho was kind of saying, into that wide receiver two spot. Obviously, with Marvin Jones getting up there in age, you could definitely see him rotating in and getting more like a heavy snap count. And so, yeah, I mean, there's nothing really bad to say about this. Wide receiver group, obviously, Mike, I like having that clear wide receiver cut one. But, obviously, if they're going to go with like a more rotational type of look, obviously, in their offense, It's not a bad wide receiver room.
Yeah, and we've talked about a couple teams in our previous episodes. We talked about like the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins, who are a lot more top heavy, where this is a team that, you don't have any superstars in the wide receiver room, but you have, a bunch of guys who are, decent, a bunch of guys who are solid, a bunch of guys who can get in, and you're always going to have fresh legs out there at the wide receiver spot. None of these guys are going to get tired most likely because when they are, they got a, pretty solid guy to back them up. So it'll be interesting to see what Trevor Lawrence can do with these guys. I don't know if any of these wide receivers are going to be great in like your fantasy football type setting, just because there's going to be a big rotation. But we're not looking into fantasy here. We're looking overall, and I think overall this isn't a necessarily huge weak point of your team. I mean, it's deep, like you said. There's a bunch of guys here to kind of see what they can do, and I think you'll come out of the first couple weeks with a pretty solid group here to start for Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, yeah. You're talking about the deepness of our wide receiver group. Even like Jeff Conn Jr. has been like he played a little bit last year. He showed a lot of upside. He looked great, but like it just basically a lot of it comes down to like experience and just we have a young team. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think up and down, we're going to get into the rest of these positions, but up and down is a very young team. I think, me and Priller just did the Jets episode last time, and that was another very, very young team, and those teams both drafting super early in the draft, and these are rebuilding teams, so you're hoping to see young teams, but yeah, these guys are super young, have plenty of room to grow, and maybe this season won't be the best for these guys, but they'll definitely, improve themselves and improve chemistry together. So it's a pretty solid unit, pretty good outlook for this wide receiver group, but nothing too special here. So we'll move on to the tight end room, which is headlined by I would say two guys are kind of going to be in rotation here, and that's Evan Engram and Dan Arnold. Um, I think there's people going different ways with these two guys. Some people think Dan Arnold should start. Some people think Evan Engram. Evan Engram, a new addition, as well as Dan Arnold, but both, don't have super expensive contracts. Um, Evan Ingram's only on a one-year deal, so you're hoping to see something out of him to end up re-signing him, but nothing guaranteed here. Evan Engram obviously is a super good athlete as a tight end. You probably could say he's the fastest tight end in the league, but it's really his hands have been a huge issue, and you're really looking you're really looking for sure hands out of your tight end most of the time. We've talked about these other teams, like I've said, with the Dolphins, the Buffalo Bills, like these guys have tight ends with sure hands. 3rd and 2, you need a couple of yards, hit that guy underneath, he's gonna catch it every time. Evan Ingram's not that guy. Now, he has that big play upside. He can, make something out of nothing a lot, but you want consistency out of your number one tight end, and Evan Ingram's not really going to give it to you. Where a guy like Dan Arnold is more of that sure-handed guy, not as great of an athlete, but has the size, 3 inches taller than Evan Ingram to be that sure-handed target, maybe your red zone target for Sam Darnold here that can get those short yardage gains that you need. And he maybe didn't have the best season that you're looking for this past season with the Jaguars, but I think Dan Arnold has the capability of growing into that tight end one over Evan Engram, even though Evan Engram's kind of your flashy new piece, new signing, but I think Dan Arnold's more of your just consistent guy, maybe not as flashy and athletic.
I mean, Dan Arnold, he was brought over during the trade with C.J. Henderson, the Panthers, and he got injured pretty short on. But when he was playing, he looked amazing because I think he was a number one when we traded for him, and Chris Bannert's was number two, and Chris Bannert's is a blocking tight end. He's like a Mercedes Lewis.
Hmm.
He just, I mean, yeah, he just overpowers people. I mean, I'm not a fan of Evan Ingram. I think his drops are a problem for my tight end. I want possessions. I just want like tight ends I see as like a almost like a safety option to throw to. And I don't see Evan Ingram as that way. I'd rather have the safety than the chance to have a big play, which I don't think the chance is very high with Evan Ingram.
Yeah, he's been very inconsistent throughout, his entire career. This will be his first year out of New York, so maybe things change for him, but yeah, I mean, he's always had drop issues, so it's not like we're really looking for anything to change. Being 5 years in the league, you don't expect a lot of change in something as simple as catching and hands. But I think with these two guys, you'll have, we talked about with the running backs having that like kind of 1-2 punch, that thunder and lightning. Here you're having that guy that can get vertical and Evan Engram and get down the field, and maybe it's like a mismatch problem for your, linebackers. He's too fast, and for corners, he's too tall. Um, where Darren Arnold he's just a consistent guy with sure hands. It's going to be that I need 3rd and 2. I need 2 yards. I need to throw it up to Dan Arnold, who's going to jump over everybody and get his hands on the ball and bring it down. So this will be a good group here. Depending on the situation, bring each guy in, and Evan Ingram's probably not your best blocking tight end, but Dan Arnold can get it done. He's no slouch in the run game. I think Evan Engram on early downs probably won't see the field a ton, and I think it'll be Dan Arnold early downs, and then you'll see if you have a 3rd and 10 and you're looking for 10 yards, you might look for an Evan Engram to hop on the field, but this will be a little bit of a rotation here. It'll be interesting. I think like I touched on with the wide receivers, we'll see pretty early on who's going to be getting the playing time here. So, Pillar,
Yeah,
I'd like to get your
yeah,
opinion
yeah,
too of
yeah,
these
yeah.
two guys, Evan Engram and Dan Arnold. What do you think about these two, um, to be Trevor Lawrence's big body targets?
Honestly, I do agree with you guys. I mean, having with your tight end having to being your sure-handed guy, and obviously Evan Ingram has shown inconsistencies in doing that, but he has been in New York, so I mean, like, cut him some slack a little bit. I mean, we're all hoping that he can do something. Obviously, we're never praying on someone's downfall, but yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, cut him some slack for being in New York, not having the greatest QBs thrown to him. But yeah, obviously we want success, and Dan Arnold, I do think that he probably will get most of the playing time. You guys kind of mentioned he is that kind of like run blocker type of guy. He is that more sure-handed target, and I think that's kind of what Trevor Lawrence needs. And coming into a sophomore season, he kind of needs someone that he knows for sure will catch that ball. But I think Evan Ingram could. I mean, obviously you don't know what to expect out of him right now because we've never seen him with like a great QB like in the recent years. So it would be interesting to see if Trevor Lawrence will use him or how they'll utilize him, basically Evan Ingram in the passing game, and see if Evan Ingram can actually turn it around and show us all different, obviously, and show us different, show us like taking that step up to be an actual good tight end in the league.
I mean, Evan Ingram and Dan Arnold are both 27. I mean, they're still pretty young in the NFL.
Yeah.
Plenty of time to like grow, which I don't think Evan Ingram's blocking is going to improve much just because of
Nah.
his size. I mean, I think Dan Arnold has a lot of upside. I'm much more of a fan of Dan Arnold than Ingram.
Yeah, but I think I'd like to touch on Doug Peterson being the new head coach too. I think we'll see a very interesting offense, and he had success in Philadelphia with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert there working a two tight end system, and both of those guys did pretty well in Philadelphia. They both got plenty of playing time, and um, it worked out well for them. Making it to the Super Bowl and winning. While Doug Peterson was there, so you could see some success out of these guys. I think both guys will get a decent amount of playing time. I don't think this is going to be a one-man show. I think both guys will see early downs and late downs. It just kind of depends on the situation, depends on, how they're feeling, energy wise. So we'll see a pretty interesting situation here with the tight ends. Big rotation in the entire receiving group, wide receivers and tight ends. A lot of guys coming in and out, most likely, is what we're going to see. So should be interesting. But your third and fourth guys are Chris Manners and Luke Farrell. Not nothing that
Maynard's
you're super happy about. I mean, these guys aren't going to be getting a ton of playing time over your top two tight ends here.
Luke Farrell was a draft pick last year. We haven't seen much from him. Chris Banhurts, I think we signed him to a decent contract last year up under Urban Meyer. But no, I think I hate to jump back to it, but Dan and Arnold and Evan Ingram. I think we're going to see a lot of like two tight end lineups this year, especially with our running game. If we have James Robinson healthy, it's just going to be like kind of Dan Arnold blocking, and then maybe the play action with Evan Ingram popping out. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And just to touch on it, yeah, I kind of did mention how Evan Ingram hasn't really had any good QBs, but I did look up. I mean, he did have Eli Manning in his rookie year, and I mean that's when he produced the most. So when he sees great QBs, obviously he can produce. And I mean, 722 yards is rookie season's pretty impressive for a rookie tight
Well,
end coming into the league.
Eli Manning in 2017 was no great
Obviously,
quarterback,
it wasn't the
anyways.
best, but I mean, get, I mean, Evan Ingram's seen a decent target share, and obviously that's kind of important. And so, I mean, I don't really know how to put it, but Eli Manning's not a bad QB. Obviously, he's not as bad as Daniel Jones. So, I mean, I'm just like kind of comparing the two.
No, yeah,
And so I think Evan Ingram could see a more of an upside. That's why I'm kind of hitting that. I think Trevor Lawrence obviously is a better QB than Daniel Jones. So I think Evan Ingram that itself can definitely help Evan Ingram produce more in the passing game or in the receiving game.
yeah, for sure. I think this will be a good group. I think the whole roster, skill position wise, is going to be pretty deep. A lot of rotations, like I said. So we'll see a lot of guys coming in and out. Maybe not the best fantasy football team, but Jaguars might not have a great fantasy football outlook, but these guys will be um, all getting some playing time. So we'll jump into the offensive line. We'll just breeze over it pretty quickly here. So going left to right, we have left tackle Cam Robinson. Left guard looks like Tyler Shatley. Center looking like Luke Fortner. You got the new addition of right guard Brandon Sheriff, and right tackle is going to be Jawan Taylor. And then, I know Macho has strong opinions about Walker Little, so I'll mention Walker Little as well as a backup tackle as well. But this group is getting upgraded. Brandon Sheriff's going to be a huge asset for Trevor Lawrence's protection, and also in the run game um, with Travis Etienne and James Robinson. But I do want to mention the losses of Andrew Norwell and Brandon Linder are going to be pretty big here. So it'll be interesting to see how this group can kind of mesh together. But Macho, I know you're probably itching to talk about these guys. So what are your thoughts on this offensive line here coming to 2022?
Okay, so Walker Little, he is shown he dropped to us in the second round. I think it was second, and he was projected to be a first round pick, but then he tore both his ACLs, I think his senior year, and he dropped. And he started playing last year or this year in that preseason game, and he has been dominating like Trevon Walker, Josh Allen. He's just been dominating like our top tier DNs. And from what it seems like, Jawan Taylor's not going to be starting. It's going to be Walker Little. Then Tyler Shatley, he's almost like a flex alignment. Like he plays every position. He fills in like wherever we need him. Like when Brandon Linder got injured last year, he filled in for him at center. I don't know who the fuck Luke Fortner is. That's honestly my first time hearing him. I mean, that's probably my bad, but you know. But yeah, no, Tyler Shatley's a great dude. He's just like able to get in any positions, be solid. He's not great. He's probably more bad, but like he's able to fill in and do a decent job.
I
But
like that you always admit that.
Walker Little has looked amazing. Cam
Yeah, I
Robinson
mean,
is dog shit though.
I don't know, if Jawan Taylor has gotten any playing time at guard in his, young college career or even, young
He's
pro
always been
career.
tackle.
He's only a tackle.
Yeah, he was a left tackle, I think, in college, but like he has not looked. He's underperformed from being a second round pick who had a lot of upside, who dropped to us. I think there's a reason he dropped to us because he's not been very good. Brandon Scherf, though, I'm actually very excited about that signing. I kind of wish we kept Andrew Norwell, but you know,
Yeah, so
Depression.
two of your three
it's
highest paid players here on the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be Cam Robinson, your left tackle, getting paid $54 million over 3 years, and Brandon Sheriff getting paid $49.5 million over 3 years. So the Jaguars definitely want to protect Trevor Lawrence and get that run game going, signing, two of your top three, um, contracts are going to be offensive linemen this upcoming year. So this should be a decent unit. Maybe nothing too crazy. You're not having any top,
no,
top, top tier linemen, but Brandon Sheriff's a great, great piece to have. Super solid. He's going
he's
to be
elite. He's elite. That's the only way to put it. He's an elite alignment that we
Yeah,
were
he's
able
going to be a
to.
super, super solid guy, probably helping these guys and elevating them um, to, play at better levels. So you're super happy there. But around him, Walker Little, like you said, has that upside to be, a first round talent. And we're
He's
going to
looking.
see early on if he's getting those starting reps, in week one. Hopefully he's able to put on a show and keep that job. So Cam Robinson, super solid left tackle.
I'll be
And
surprised.
Walker Little will hopefully get in the rotation as well. But I think Brandon Sheriff and Cam Robinson will be super solid guys on this offensive line, and the rest of the guys, will just need to fill in and do a decent job to keep this offense going.
I mean, Cam Robinson, he's a great player. He really is a good old lineman, but he's a hothead. I mean, Prillo, you're a Seahawks fan. You remember the game a couple years ago? I think it was 2017 when the Jaguars played the Seahawks, and a couple players got ejected. They're throwing beer cans at the players, and they all started because Cam Robinson was trying to fight some D linemen.
That's interesting that you bring that up. I mean, yeah, obviously that's a problem when it comes to being an offensive lineman because you got the defensive line who likes to talk shit the whole time.
Hotheads.
But
He
yeah, so
wants to
obviously
hide.
that's a big problem. I mean, offensive line, you're supposed to be have not a lot of emotion on the offensive line. You're supposed to just do your job, protect the QB. Obviously, if you're getting ejected during the game, it's not a good thing. But yeah, I mean, kind of just touching on what you guys said, Brandon Sheriff obviously is an amazing offensive lineman. I think that's a great addition to the Jaguars team. Obviously, Macho touched on them losing Andrew Norwell and that, and Brandon Linder retiring. But I think with seeing Trevor Lawrence getting sacked 32 times last year, obviously the Jaguars made it a need to upgrade that offensive line. I think with bringing in Brandon Sheriff, that's exactly what they wanted to do. I mean, him being such a great pass protecting offensive lineman, I think this was just obviously can't say enough how much of an amazing addition it was to this team.
I mean, I can't. I really don't know anything about the bench players. I know Ben Barch. He was that one dude who filmed that video of him drinking that nasty ass smoothie at the combine. He was a tight end. He put on a shit ton of weight. When he actually played last year, he filled in for Andrew Norwell when he was injured. He looked great. He actually looked very good. I'm very excited about Ben Barch. Casey McDermott is another one of those like Tyler Shalley players that just like they can fill in any role. They can play anything of O line, just like a little below average, but they do it decently. Just enough to like get the job done.
Yeah, they're
Like,
basically band-aids, in case a guy goes down,
yeah.
they can fill in any spot on the offensive line and do an okay job. And, once your starter gets back in, then they hop back on the bench where they, belong. And they have a role on this team. Just, having that guy on the bench, I think it's a valuable piece to have on any team up and down because injuries happen to every position. So having a guy that can come in and fill roles for you is perfect.
I think Ben Barch actually has a chance to end up starting. He showed like an aggression that was just unreal. Like it was like, I mean, we were like probably like two and we I think we won one game at this point in the season, and like he's behind the O line, he's throwing people around, he's getting everyone fired up in the huddle. Like Ben Barch is an electric dude. He is a fun alignment to watch. He's aggressive. He's one of those dudes who just like wants to put the pressure on, wants to make it electric as possible. And like it's fun to watch. Like there's people like Quinn Nelson, like I don't know, what's the 49ers left tackle?
Trent Williams.
Yeah, I mean they're fun to watch. It's like O linemen, they're just like they have the
Yeah, their
energy that
goal is to put
you
the
want
guy
to
in
watch.
front of them on their ass.
Yeah, and it's fun as hell to watch.
Yeah,
Like you
exactly.
want to see it. And Ben Barch has that attitude, which I love. I love more than anything. I like the grittiness of the players, and he actually is probably my favorite lineman on the team, even though he's probably not close to the best.
So let me ask you one more question before we move on to the defense here. What do you know about a guy named Coy Cronk?
Dude, I know absolutely nothing. Honestly, this I was looking at this thing, I was like, who the fuck is this dude? And who the fuck is Boo? But that's like I don't
Uh,
know these dudes' names.
well, they're
I just
probably
know our
not gonna make the team if that makes you feel any
I don't
better.
know, not
So
a chance. I know Daryl Williams.
yeah, Darrell Williams has been around. He's bounced around to a couple
Yeah.
teams. Maybe he'll find a spot, but who knows?
But yeah, no, I think our O line has a very high upside this year.
I think overall, so we'll wrap up the offense here. I think overall
I think
this
Fortner's a
offense,
rookie. I'm pretty sure he's a rookie.
who?
Fortner.
Fortner.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's a
okay,
rookie this year. He's a third
gotcha.
round rookie. He could be pretty good. I mean, Braden Linder was fucking amazing. Braden Linder was incredible for us.
Yeah,
He
I
really
mean,
was.
you're hoping that Luke Fortner can get up to that
I
upside,
don't
but
think he will.
as a third
Braden
round
Linder was
rookie coming out of Kentucky, he's got the size, 6'6", to be that guy, and he's an older rookie coming out, 24 years old, so
he
you're
was the
probably
last.
hoping for him to have a pretty good first, rookie season to start more than
Did you hear who the last draft pick we took from Kentucky was?
um no. Do I?
It was Josh Allen.
Josh Allen, that is correct.
Yeah.
And not the quarterback for anybody listening out there.
No, that dude fucking
He's from
sucks.
Wyoming.
No, I love Josh Allen. He's my favorite quarterback.
All right. Well, to wrap up this offense, I think overall super super young team, um, and a lot of upside at most of the positions here. It's just kind of will they get to that? And I think the new coach of Doug Peterson, the new addition there, will definitely help this team. I think it'll be a better offense than this past season. I think you upgraded pretty much everywhere, so I think it'll overall be a much better offense. And I think there's a lot of upside here, like I'm saying, with these young guys. So they can grow together, get that chemistry going, and hopefully you'll see an uptick in production. But overall, this team isn't going to do anything crazy, most likely. I mean, Macho in the intro kind of previewed this whole season
No,
as being,
we
we
love
suck.
this
We
season.
we suck every year, but I think this offense will be pretty solid. So, what do you guys think about the outlook here going into 2021, just as the whole offense? What is this team going to do, as a unit?
I mean, one thing I'll say about this season is that we have a very high ceiling, but our floor is very low. Like
Yeah, that's
we
fair to
could have
say.
a chance to really fuck up
You
stuff.
could have another season like this past year in 2021 where you go 3-14, but this team definitely could be a team that, in a weak division could be maybe competing for a playoff spot. I mean, I doubt it with the Colts and the Titans in your division, but you could be up there. This team could be around 500 depending on how well these guys can mesh together and we'll hop into the defense as well, but I think offensively this will be it won't be a bottom 5, bottom 10 offense in the league. It'll be serviceable.
We play our division. We play the series the AFC West, so we're pretty much fucked.
Well, the whole AFC kind of,
AFC West is
looks
unbelievably
crazy.
good.
Obviously, the AFC West with all their additions has been nuts, but it's going to be tough to get into the playoffs if you're any team in the AFC, especially a team that just had the number one pick. So maybe not a crazy expectation, but like you said, the ceiling's high. You have the upside, so we'll see what they can do. But Priller, what are your thoughts here going into 2021 about just the offense here for the Jaguars?
You know, honestly, I kind of liked how you put it. I mean, they obviously could perform and outperform. Obviously, like do good. That's what I'm basically trying. They could compete. Obviously, go 500, but they also could do what they did this year and just do shitty. But I mean, that's kind of could be said for a lot of teams. But I think this team more likely than not could definitely happen to them. But obviously, yeah, pretty young team. Obviously led by Trevor Lawrence. Definitely you want to see something come out of this team. You definitely want to see some production. You want to see something that the Jaguar fans haven't seen in a while.
Yeah, and I think even if you don't see, a ton of wins in the win column, you just want to see growth as a team, as a unit, because these guys are going to be together for a while. A lot of these guys on rookie contracts or long-term deals can work together to grow as players. So, if nothing else, have this team grow and be better for the future. And that's really all you can look for with the offense, at least. So, as long as you guys are good, said everything about this offense that you want to say. You guys both all set. Macho, Priller, how we feeling?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, well, we'll take a quick break here before we hop into the defense, but stay
Better
tuned. We'll be right back on the Underground Football Podcast. Hey guys, I'm your host Mike. Go check us out on Twitter at the UF Pod, where we post updates on the latest news in the NFL, and it's also the best place to engage with us. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to talking football. Welcome back to the Underground Football Podcast, where we're doing our 2022 preview of the Jacksonville Jaguars. We've hopped in and we've done the entire offense, obviously, as you just heard, and now we're going to hop into the defensive side of the ball. We'll start with the edge rushing group here, headlined by your 1-2 punch in Josh Allen, who we touched on a little bit earlier, and the number one overall pick, rookie phenom Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. Now, these guys are both unbelievable athletes, very, very fast around the edge. Both have great size as well.
Yeah,
Josh
for
Allen
real.
has been doing it for a few years now, drafted 7th overall in 2019. So, 2 first round picks on your edge. Super happy about that. But these guys have the size to, manhandle their tackle, the opposing tackles. So Josh Allen at 6'5", 262, and Trayvon Walker at 6'5", 275. These guys are unbelievable athletic specimens of human beings. Super long arms on both of them, and Josh Allen has shown that he can drop into coverage a little bit. Now this is going to be a 3-4 defense, so these guys will be, you know, listed as linebackers in some places, but they're going to be getting after the passer most of the time. But they're both athletes that can get out into coverage if they need to. But Trayvon Walker, I'd like to touch on first. He is the definition of
Raw.
polarizing, and you don't know what you're going to get out of this guy yet. So he was drafted number one overall as basically just like athletic upside. We, could have the best pass rusher in the league if he turns out, but if he doesn't, things aren't going to be great. So this guy has unbelievable upside, as I've said a couple times already, but he, it'll just take some time for him to get into the groove. He's only 21 years old, um, but drafted number one overall. You're hoping for this guy to come in and start out pretty strong at the beginning, but Josh Allen on the other side will be your guy to give you that guaranteed production there at your edge rushing spot. So, Josh Allen coming into his rookie year had 10 and a half sacks, had only 8 games played in 2020. So, don't count this for anything really, but 2.5 sacks in 2020, and then 2021 back again for 16 games had 7.5 sacks. So Josh Allen super solid on the edge, can defend the run, can defend the pass, can get after the quarterback. This guy's your do-it-all edge rusher. He's one of the best guys in the league to just get after the quarterback, and he'll be able to help out Trayvon Walker in the beginning of his career, his early young career. These guys are both very young. Josh Allen's still only 25 years old, so these guys will be able to grow together as a great 1-2 duo. So Priller, I'll hop in with you first. What do you think about the 1-2 on the edge? These young guns here, getting after the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it earlier, obviously, with them being massive. I mean, both of them towering at 6'5". That's huge as coming off the edge. I mean, having both those guys, obviously being at the size too, so 6'5", obviously, and also weighing that 270, 260 pounds. I mean, those are big guys on the edge, and obviously those guys bring the power. Obviously, they bring the strength to the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, you touched on them being young, and I just like to come also to it is Clavon Chason. I mean, he's also very young. This edge rushing group that we're talking about, they're very very young, and obviously it's kind of been noted that the Jaguars they really want to build up that defensive line. I mean, using such high draft capital on these edge rushers, it's a clear sign to say that the Jaguars really want to focus on their edge rushers.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen teams with, premier edge rushing talent have had a lot of success, and it's a very important position. So they've been investing in it. And 2019, 2020, and then you skip a year, but 2022, all first round picks that they have been, for edge rushing defenders. So Clavon Chason, you pointed him out, first round pick in 2020. Has not turned out into what you were hoping. He was another project that you were just kind of throw in your first round pick at upside and athletic ability, but he obviously has not turned out to be what you were hoping. But I think, the pick of Trayvon Walker shows you that they're ready to move on to a phenomenal athlete, a better athlete than Clavon in Trayvon Walker. So these guys will be getting a little bit of rotation in. There's a couple other guys that may be getting some time, but I think your main two are going to be Trayvon and Josh Allen. So Macho, I'll hop in with you now if that's cool to see what you think about your number one overall pick this year and your super solid, not veteran, but guy who's been doing it for a few years here in Josh Allen.
I mean, Josh Allen was top, but he had a couple years under Calais Campbell. I think it was just 1 year. But yeah, no, Josh Allen's he's good. He's solid. He gets the job done. He fucking developed great, and that's rare for the Jaguars. Jaguars don't develop defensive players, but Kavon Chason, I mean, I hope he develops. He's underperformed, and that draft class is looking horrendous. I mean, we had took CJ Henderson, I think ninth, and then we took Clavon Chasson. I'd probably butchering his name right now,
Yeah, I
but we
don't know
took
if anyone else is saying it right. Don't worry about it. Clavon
yeah,
Chason, Clavon
Clavon
Chason, we don't know.
Chasson. Yeah,
So go with
but yeah,
whatever
no,
you
I
think.
think yeah, no, that it's just literally a bad draft class right now. But Trayvon Walker, I was very upset with that pick. I wanted Hutchison, and then we got to the first preseason game, and he looked dominant. He was everywhere. He's built like Miles Garrett. I mean, his upside is literally a Miles Garrett. He's just a freak athlete
Yeah.
who needs a little bit more like polishing on the skill side, which I don't. I mean, he seems like he has the determination to do it, but it just depends if he gets it done. But yeah, no, he looks like amazing. I actually am really excited about our D line, our defense ends. But yeah, Jordan Smith, he can go fuck himself.
Okay. Interesting.
Okay.
So, um, I'll hop back with Trayvon Walker. Just pointing out what you said that that pick was, maybe frowned upon around the league, but I think it's iffy. It's weird when you're in that position that the Jaguars are in with the number one pick and having Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker be like kind of your guys you're deciding between. Hutchinson's your more polished guy who's maybe not got the insane crazy upside that a guy like Trayvon Walker has, but you basically know you're gonna get, his floor is pretty high. So maybe you wanted Hutchinson there, but I think, it depends how the Jaguars think they can work with Trayvon Walker to get him up to that Miles Garrett type athleticism, Miles Garrett type, you know, skill set. So it's going to be interesting because the Jaguars, like you said, haven't really had much success at developing guys, but it worked out with Josh Allen. So there's nothing saying that Trayvon Walker can't work out as well. It's just, it was an interesting pick. I think if you go with Hutchinson, you have your guy who you know is going to be pretty solid overall. Maybe he can get a little bit better, but you're not going to look at Hutchinson as being, a top defensive end or pass rusher, whatever you want to call him. But Trayvon Walker has a high floor, but also a really low floor and a really high ceiling. So this guy could be amazing. And like you said, that preseason game, in the Hall of Fame game, he looked unbelievable. So
Oh,
we'll
he
see
was
what he can
fucking
do.
amazing. He
Yeah,
really like outperformed himself.
he looked like a man amongst boys at times. So this guy could be
Mhm.
an unbelievable player. Only time will tell. But this duo should be pretty solid. As long as Trayvon Walker can look like he did in preseason, in the regular season, these guys should be getting after the passer each play and just harassing the enemy offensive linemen. So,
Yeah, yeah, I
um,
would agree. I mean, yeah,
I think
that's
after that,
perfect.
you basically have Clavon Chason, who, like we said, is kind of just still you're looking for development there, which there hasn't been any, but he's still only 23 years old. So this guy still has time. Um, but obviously, like Macho pointed out, this has not looked like a great pick. And the whole draft class, with CJ Henderson as well, has not looked great. But Clavon Chason does have the ability to grow as a player, and Josh Allen has shown that in this system, he can grow into the player that he wanted to be. And so I think Clavon Chason has the capability of growing as a player, but we'll see how that works out. But I think him and Trayvon Walker working, in tandem on one side, and then Josh Allen being your main guy on the other side, these guys should come out with a pretty good edge rushing, duo or trio, however it works out. This should be a pretty solid unit. So, you know, the backups here, there aren't a ton of, big names, obviously. Rashad Berry, Macho pointed out Jordan Smith, Jameer Jones, Deshaun Dixon, and Wyatt Ray. I don't think any of these guys are really going to get significant playing time. They'll be in
Yeah,
rotationally, but you have your main two or three guys that you're going to get a lot of playing time from.
I'll explain the Jordan Smith stuff quick. So it's kind of like a little mystery, but so basically we drafted Jordan Smith about 2 years ago, and he has not played a snap for us yet. He has been injured every fucking year, every fucking snap. He's not made what is it, OTAs yet. He's been injured before OTAs. It is the most annoying fucking player because I mean he was exciting. He was an athletic edge rusher. Everyone was really pumped about, but he just cannot stay healthy. The one thing I'll give, like you're saying, Clavon Chason, like he's like unexpected. You don't know where you get from. He he has showed determination. He wants to get better. He's talk. I think there's a clip of him talking to a veteran, exploring new moves. I think it was might have been Joey Bosa. But yeah, no, he wants to get better. He wants to be the best player he can be. And I mean, that's what you love to see out of a player.
Yeah, you want work ethic out of your young guys, especially these guys that are projects coming out. You know, Clavon Chazon was taken as a project that just has that athletic ability that you can't teach these guys, but he just needed to refine himself, and he hasn't got to that point yet. But you like to see work ethic out of these guys and that determination, like you said, to get better. So there's definitely a shot for him. And Jordan Smith, um, I'd like to point out was a fourth round pick in the 2021 draft. Obviously, he hasn't got on the field, so we don't really know a ton about him, and he's on injured reserve again, so we probably won't see him very much, if at all, this season as well. So, your main two guys, Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, we talked about both of them pretty extensively. I know, or if you guys have any other points to make, go ahead right now, or I can hop into the interior of this defensive
Another
line.
choice, right?
Um,
Yeah. So basically, old Jaguars fans are really excited to see him play this year. And then the day before OTA started, he got injured. So yeah, he's a fucking pussy. He can go fuck himself.
yeah, I
Yep.
mean, moving on from that. I mean, just touching again. I mean, they're highlighting they are a very young group, and I mean, Macho kind of mentioned Clavon Chason, having that determination factor, going up to veterans and trying to learn new skill sets, and obviously that's a huge thing. And it would be kind of it would have been nice to see this offseason the Jaguars bring in more of a veteran face on the edge rushing unit to kind of give these younger guys kind of more tools in their tool belt to use and to be more successful.
I mean, that's one thing about being Jaguars, like, especially because we're based out of Jacksonville. It's a small market team. It's very hard to get players to our market, which is, at the end of the day, it's why we had to pay Christian Kirk so much money. It's why we had to pay, that's why at the time we had to pay Calais Campbell so much money, even though he turned out to be fucking amazing. It's we're a small market team that has to like overpay for players because no one wants to live in fucking Jacksonville. I went to Jacksonville once. It's a dog shit city. It's not fun there. It's dirty. It's fucking like floody nonstop. Jacksonville sucks. But like it's hard to get people to get there and like to be players there.
Yeah, and I mean the
So,
team hasn't
hey,
had much success either, so.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just like it's not an exciting determination. The one thing they have going for them is they have Florida taxes. It's the only thing they have going for them. Everything else is just like disappointing. It's not a good destination to go to. I mean, Adrian Norwell was the only dude who enjoyed it just because he fished fucking every day. But yeah, but you know, it's hard to get players to go there.
All right, fair
Yeah,
enough.
I feel that. So we'll hop into the defensive or the interior defensive lineman here. Um, I think the edge rushers should be great at getting after the passer, but I think these guys on the interior will be better, run defending and just blowing up plays whether it's passes or runs. But I think your main guy here is Foley Fadukasi. I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. The new addition coming over from the New York Jets, he gets a $30 million contract here to come to Jacksonville. Maybe an overpay, but I don't really think so. I think this guy's
I'm
going to
actually,
be a great player here in Jacksonville. I think,
I'm gonna counter that.
what was that?
I'm gonna counter that actually.
All right, well,
So,
hold on. Let me do a little bit
oh,
here
my
on
bad,
him.
my bad.
So Fadukasi's basically your nose tackle run defender type. Now this guy isn't going to be your pass rusher at all. He's not going to get a ton of sack numbers, ton of pressure numbers, but he's going to fill up holes. He's going to take on blockers, and he's going to allow your linebackers and your other defensive linemen to have a feast on these running backs that are coming through. So this guy's going to be in on early downs, but I think he's genuinely a top five, maybe even more, maybe even higher top five run defender in the NFL. So this guy's, and I guess I'm talking, at his position. You have guys like Aaron Donald and stuff who can just literally take over games, but this guy is going to be, if you're looking for a nose tackle who can fill up run gaps and do a great job at getting your linebackers free, one-on-one tackles with running backs, this is the guy that you want to come in and do that. 6'4", 318 pounds, still only 27 years old, but he showed with the Jets that he can be a menace and a force to be reckoned with for enemy offensive lines. So Macho, I'll let you go in on why you think that Fadukasi's a bad signing, I guess.
No. I'm not saying he's a bad sign. I don't know much about him. I really don't. I don't pay attention to the fucking Jets. My apologies, but I'm saying that our best interior D lineman is Devon Hamilton. So we took him. I don't even remember the draft pick we took him, but it wasn't early. It was round
Third
three.
round
So
pick in 2020, 73rd overall.
yeah, and so he was Ohio State. He turned out fucking amazing, very good. He's not a very good pass rusher, but his run defense is phenomenal. It is actually it is very underrated. It is great. And we have instantly pushed him up to our team. Like, he knows what to do. He gets like, during the time, like, when we had him, we had, like, the problems with the run game. Like, Derrick Henry's running 200 yards a game on us. And he was the one bright spot on that team. Like, Miles Jack, as much as I love him, awful at run defense. Great pass coverage, awful at run defense. But yeah, no, Devon Hamilton was the one bright side on that team for run defense. And he was able to get to the ball every time. He actually was like, he was exciting to watch. He was a defensive tackle who I enjoyed watching because he was physical, he was smart with his moves, he was able to get to the pass rusher and like disrupt the runner. Especially when we're in a league with Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry, we have to have that. It's
Yeah,
just necessary.
I think both of these guys on the inside are going to be deadly. I think, they're both huge human beings. 6'4" and, 318 and 320. These guys are giants. So the two of them together on first down, Derrick Henry's going to have a tough time. Now, maybe, Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry, but these guys
He's
are going
there.
to definitely be able to fill up run gaps and take on a lot of blockers, and it'll be a super solid 1-2 punch. Um, for run defense, but I'd like to hop into pass rushers, but I'll give Priller some time here. Priller, what do you think about, the run defense duo here in Fadukasi and Devon Hamilton on the defensive line for the Jaguars? These guys are going to, do their job and that's their role, but what do you think about the two of them, going forward?
I like Devon Hamilton. Obviously, he's that younger type guy. I mean, Macho kind of touched on it. He is that guy that fills that hole up there, that nose tackle. And Macho's kind of mentioning him pass rushing, but I mean, that's not really what you're looking for in a nose tackle. You're kind of looking for someone who obviously can just kind of fill up that hole. And I mean, yeah, he's young, and Machos can only say great things about him. But obviously, the Jags aren't really. They don't. I'm not saying they don't like him, but obviously they're thinking that they need a more of an upgrade at that nose tackle position, which obviously you touched on
No,
bringing in.
we don't appreciate him. We don't appreciate him.
But obviously bringing in this newer guy. Mike, could you give me a translation of his last name? But yeah, just bringing in this
Fadukasi.
newer guy. Yeah, Fadukasi. Bringing in this newer guy. Obviously, you kind of touched on him being a great run defender. I think it's exactly what the Jags kind of needed in this division that they're in. There's the stacked running back division that they're in with Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor, like Macho mentioned. So I think this is a great addition to their team. And obviously, I see this guy being very successful in this 3-4 defense.
Yeah, like I said, this guy, in my opinion, is one of the best run defenders in the entire league. So he should be a
Are you talking
welcome
about
addition
are you
in.
talking about full run?
Foley
Yeah.
Fadukasi, yes.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Are you
Yep.
talking about him?
Yes, I
Yep.
am.
Where have you
My
been?
apologies for his name.
That's
All
okay.
right.
So, hopping in with the rest of the interior guys. So obviously we talked about the two of them being your run defenders, but you have some guys in here that are going to be more of your pass rushing interior guys. You have Roy Robertson Harris, Malcolm Brown is a little bit in between. He can do a little bit of both. Adam Gotsis, Dwayne Smoot, and
It's very underrated.
Arden Key's going to be more on the edge as a smaller guy, but Arden Key's a good guy, 6.5 sacks this past season, but he'll be more on the edge. So
I mean, Mike, I know you're a 49ers fan. Arden Key has been exceptional for us so far. In our one game preseason, he had 2 sacks, I think 2 tackles for losses. He's looked great.
Yeah, so
I don't know
Arden
why
Key
you guys
coming
cut him off.
over from the 49ers was in that rotation over there, so he wasn't getting, a ton of playing time and still put up great numbers and still, you knew when he was on the field, he was making his presence known. So this guy can get after the quarterback. He's quick. He's that speed rusher around the edge. He's not super powerful. He's not your big, Trayvon Walker type where he's 275 pounds. He's at 240. So this guy's going to use his speed to get around the edge and, chase
He's a
down these
speed rusher.
quarterbacks. What was that?
He's a speed rusher.
Yeah, so he's
Yep.
going to be your speed guy, while maybe Trayvon Walker will be your power guy on the other side. So Arden
Yeah.
Key though, super solid. Rotational um, guy, or he's going to be super solid in rotation. He's not your every down guy. He's going to come in on third downs when Trayvon and Josh Allen are tired. He's going to rotate in and get after the passer pretty well. So
I mean, so far, I mean, in one game he succeeded in that. He had 2 sacks.
yeah,
He
I
was
mean that
very
is
dominant.
preseason though. You can't put a ton
Yeah,
into that.
obvious. Obviously, but yeah, I'm curious. Who did he sit behind when he was on the 49ers? Did he sit behind Bosa, or who did he sit behind?
So with the 49ers, they had a huge rotation, including Bosa. So it's basically all of the guys are rotating. For some reason, they even have Nick Bosa in rotation, even though he's obviously your best guy. Um,
So
but
they had
they
Nick Bosa at, like D line or like defensive tackle. I mean,
no 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 no. Arden Key's gonna be off the edge. He's not gonna be on the interior.
was he falling off like Nick Bosa off the edge, or was he falling off like I don't even know who your other edge rusher
No,
was?
yeah, he was Nick Bosa was on the field obviously the most, and then it was like Samson, Ebu Cam, and Komoko Ture, and Charles Omenihu were on like the other side, kind of in rotation with Jordan Willis as well. There's a bunch of these guys that kind of come in and out as needed. It was basically to just keep these guys as fresh as possible. So Arden Key got a unbelievably small amount of playing time for how much he affected the game. So,
He's
with
fucking
maybe a
great.
bigger
He
role, he could
really is a
definitely
good
produce a
player.
lot more. Hmm?
No, he really is a great player.
No, yeah, 100%. And, he probably wanted to come to Jacksonville to get a little bit bigger of a role here, to not sit behind all these guys in San Francisco.
I mean, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Right now, it sounds like he's gonna be our starting like interior D end because we right now we just switched to 3-4, so we have which I still I mean, we're talking about edge rusher right now. I don't think we should be having Trayvon Walker as an edge rusher. I think he should be a D end. He's a fucking massive dude.
Yeah, I think he'll go in between. I don't think he'll be at one spot or the other. I
No,
think he'll
it
kind
sounds
of.
like Doug wants him to be a edge rusher specifically and drop back in coverage, even though he has had an interception from Trevor Lawrence already.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how Doug Peterson uses him. I think it'll be a little bit of both, but maybe he starts him out on the edge and he doesn't do so well and he goes inside. We'll see. So, to move on because we're taking a long time with guys like Arden Key who probably aren't going to have huge roles as time goes on. But I touched on Dwayne Smoot, who you said is super underrated, and I believe so as well. This past season had 6 sacks, but you look back to 2020 and 2019, 5.5 sacks and 6 sacks in 2019 as well. So this guy is able to get after the
Smoot
passer from.
constantly disrupts. Dwayne Smoot is constantly disrupting the pass. He's a great player.
Yeah, he's a very underrated guy, so he'll definitely be in rotation as well. More on those pass rushing downs when you'll have like Fadukowski and Hamilton in on earlier downs. Then you have Adam Gotsis, who will also be in that rotation, maybe getting after the passer a little bit more. 3 sacks this past season for Jacksonville, pretty solid. And then Malcolm Brown, I kind of touched on him being kind of in between. So he's a big guy, 6'2", 320, but he can move a little bit. He can get after the passer. Former first round pick for the New England Patriots in 2015. Didn't really pan out as what they thought, but he's a good run defender and can get after the passer sometimes too. And then last guy I'll touch on is Roy Robertson Harris. Who's a bigger guy, 6'5", 298. On the interior, can get after the passer. Played 4 years with the Chicago Bears, and first season in Jacksonville had 3 sacks this past season in 14 games. So this will be a big rotation, I think, on the interior especially. These guys will all be coming in and out like crazy. I don't think you'll really see, you know, one or two guys in all the time, but I think your main two guys on early downs will be Fatukasi and Hamilton, and then the rest of the guys will all rotate in on your third and fourth downs. So, I'll grab Priller's opinion here. We haven't heard from you in a little bit. What do you think about the rotation on the interior? Because obviously it's going to be a bunch of guys, at least in my opinion. But are there any guys that stick out to you as those starting level, starting caliber guys?
Not too much. They don't really jump off the page at me, honestly. But I mean, obviously this whole edge rushing group obviously is headlined by the two main guys, Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker, who are going to be seeing off the edge more than these other guys. But I think you described them perfectly as like rotational players, and I definitely think they play their role in this defense. I definitely think that they will all see like some type of playing time on the field, and they all could help contribute to a solid defensive unit.
For sure, I think this won't be a weakness of this team. I think they'll be able to get after the passer and defend the run, better than previous seasons with all these new additions. So, should be a solid group. But we'll hop into the rest of the front seven here, and that is the linebacking group, who is headlined by two new additions who haven't been with the team yet, and that's your rookie first round pick Devin Lloyd out of Utah with a 27th overall pick, and your free agent signing from the Atlanta Falcons, Foyesade Oluokun. Hoping I'm saying that right as well. Um, but Oluokun comes over on a 3-year, $45 million deal, so you're hoping to get a lot out of him. But he's basically like having another safety or another corner on the field. He's super, super fast, can get, or not get, but he can lock onto these receivers and tight ends over the middle and, stick with them and run with them. So he's 6'2", 229, not a small guy, but he's quick on his feet and can move really fast. So super solid guy in coverage. Maybe not your best run defender on the team, but he can fly around and cover the pass really well. And then Devin Lloyd, maybe that in between guy that can do a little bit of both. You're drafting a guy in the first round to be able to defend the run and the pass. But Devin Lloyd's a little bit bigger, 6'3", 235. But both these guys are young. Aluakun's 27, and Devin Lloyd, obviously the rookie, is 23. So these guys will be able to grow together, and they'll be, a linebacking duo for at least the 3 years that Aluakun's contract is. And we'll see how that goes. But I think this will be a pretty good combination of having, both guys that can cover a tight end over the middle of the field, can run with a slot receiver, but can also, fill a gap when they need to and defend the run. Um, Alongside of that great interior defensive line that we talked about. So I'll talk with Macho first. What do you think of Devin Lloyd and Foyesade Oluokun?
So, right when we signed him, I mean, before all this happened, we traded away Miles Jack, and that was a huge deal. I mean, Miles Jack was our last player from the 2017 AFC Championship game, and so basically, I was a big fan of that. I watched back on a lot of his things. Miles Jack was awful in coverage, or no, not coverage, on run defense. Great in coverage, but once it comes to run defense, he would always drop back in coverage so quick that he couldn't do anything. So I actually this decision to get Mike, can you say his name?
Foyesade Oluokun.
That was not a bad idea. I think he's a great addition. It's perfect to get everything in there. I don't know much about Devin Lloyd. I know Chad Muma was another big sign. I don't know much about them, but Devin Lloyd, it sounded like he was a very good player, and I'm very excited to see him. I think Foy, Mike, say his name.
Foyesade Oluokun.
I think he is a great addition. I think he's a great sign. I think it adds like a little like it adds the aspect of Miles Jack. Like it's just gets to the ball. I don't know if he's a high IQ player. I really don't. I mean, you guys tell me if he is. I don't know much about him.
I think honestly he's you know,
Is he
you're
more of an instinct player?
he's more of just using his speed to do anything, but he's great in coverage. So I think, he's similar to Miles Jack in that aspect, where he's going to be focused on coverage first and run defense second. Um, and I do think that Miles Jack is better than a guy like Foye Oluokun, but I do think that he'll have a spot here, and I think the combination of him and Devin Lloyd will be nice. But Alukin's definitely your smaller linebacker. That's almost like having a safety, um, an
which
extra safety on the field.
I don't mind that, to be honest. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean Miles Jack was a bigger guy, who was
He
definitely
was
like,
slow. He was
yeah,
not
you
very.
were you were wanting him to be a thumper in the run game, not
Yep.
necessarily in coverage, and he was
He's
good in
grown.
coverage, but when you're so big, it's hard for you to, run with a slot receiver over the middle of the field who's nice and quick on their feet. But I think Foyesade Oluokun will be able to do that a little bit better than a guy like Miles Jack.
Especially when Miles Jack commits the ball, he would be stuck on that. He wouldn't be able to get back in coverage. There's no chance of saving it. When he actually commits to the run, there's no chance of saving it. He was too fucking slow. And I think I don't know much about Devin Lloyd. I don't know if he's a high IQ player. Like we need someone just as a middle linebacker, just be like kind of just ordering the field around, just getting everything steady.
Yeah, I think
From
that'll
what
be
I've
your
heard,
Devin Lloyd there, just being like
I
the
think Devin
quarterback of
Lloyd,
your
it sounds
defense.
like from what I've heard from like all the draft shit, he's very smart. And I'm very pumped for that.
Yeah,
And I was very I actually that was a one like free agency signing I paid attention to was a Foyesade Alukan. Did I get that right?
yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah. I was very excited about signing because I knew he's an athletic player. He's almost like Miles Jack, just younger and actually, which is rare, more athletic. So Miles Jack was a freak athlete. He really was.
Yeah,
But he was very inconsistent in his coverage. And also, yeah, I know, wherever he had a lot of holes,
yeah. I
which
think
I
this
think
will
a
be a
lot of
good duo here. Both guys coming in their first year together too. They might bond over that. I think they'll be able to work together in tandem. So, Pillar, I'll get your opinions here. On starting
Yeah,
two linebackers,
I
Devin
mean,
Lloyd and Foyesade
obviously,
Oluokun.
I don't know much about like both these guys, but Devin Lloyd definitely, obviously, they seem pretty high on him, drafting him in the first round. Obviously, like I've kind of mentioned before, focusing a lot of the first round picks on defensive players, which shows that they're really they're really in the mindset of stopping. Their defense wins games, defense wins
I'm
championships.
trying
You
to
know
get
what I mean?
back to that 2017 team.
Yeah. So obviously, I can see them going with Devin Lloyd there. But you talk about Foyesade
like
Oluokun. But yeah, I mean, I think the reason why they kind of signed him because he's shown that he's able to progress. I mean, in the 4 years that he was with the Falcons, I mean, always kind of increasing in his tackles, obviously, with the down season in 2019. But he shows improvement. I think that's a very important thing coming into this young Jacksonville Jaguars team. I think someone who's progressing and actually moving up and like showing that they're growing as a player in the NFL is really important for this team. Obviously, them being all very young. So I think that this was a great addition to their team. And obviously, you guys touched on all of his like aspects and skill set that he has. So I'm not going to get into it, but I think it's just a great signing for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I
yeah, I
think
mean,
Oluokun's going to be great. Smart guy out of Yale. I'd like to point out, Macho's looking for that smart guy in Jacksonville. Maybe he got him
oh yeah.
here out of Yale. So,
I
but
mean,
like
Pillar,
Pillar
when you're
said,
saying all that shit,
he's
like
gotten
I
better
definitely
every
agree.
year.
Like Miles Jack definitely plateaued. Everyone was just like, yeah, he's a top tier linebacker, but he never got past that. He plateaued. He didn't get anything above that. It was just like, yeah, he's there. He's gonna stay there, and you're just like you're stuck with that. And where he was at was not acceptable. It was just like wasn't good for the NFL.
Yeah, I think Oluokun, you saw him last year have a career year, 102 solo tackles, 2 sacks, a forced fumble, and 3 interceptions. So he's all over the place. He's going to be
I mean,
making
sorry to
plays in
interrupt, but like,
the
didn't
run
he
game.
lead the league in tackles?
He may have.
I'm pretty sure he did.
He may have led the league in tackles.
I know he did actually.
Regardless, Devin Lloyd and him should be a good combo. But I'll hop into the other guys in rotation, being Chad Muma, the third round pick out of Wyoming. Um, Only 22 years old. Well, we'll see what we can get out of him, but I think you have your main two guys, and I'll touch on Shaquille Quarterman, the fourth round pick out of 2020. Shorter guy, smaller guy, more of kind of like that safety type, like I'm talking about. Quicker
Yeah,
guy,
no,
maybe not
he's not
thumping,
athletic.
but
Phil Gordon is an athletic player, and that's basically about it.
Yeah, not a lot to say there. He won't get a ton of playing time. So your main guys, Devin Lloyd and Foy Sadaluakun, will be super solid. But we'll move on to the corner room now.
Yeah,
You got a
before
couple.
we do that, I would say Chad Moon was a very interesting draft pick. I don't know what we're gonna get from him, but it's confusing. I don't know what we're gonna get from him. Could be good, could be not. I'm actually very intrigued by Chad Muma. But yeah, move on.
All right. We'll hop in with the corners. I think this is a pretty solid unit as well. So you have Tyson Campbell, who was the second round pick last year in 2021 out of Georgia. Just basically a first round pick. He got picked, 33rd overall. So basically a first rounder. And, this guy came in year one and had a pretty solid season to start. So he should be growing even more and becoming that player that you're hoping he can become. And I think he showed that he's capable of, having a strong floor. So this guy should be a super solid corner one. If you want to call Shaquille Griffin your corner one, that's what we'll jump into next. Getting paid $40 million over 3 years, this guy's going to be a solid guy, unbelievable speed and athleticism. Both of these guys are pretty good in size too. 6 foot and 6'1" for your corners are nice, tall corners that can match up with these, jump ball receivers. And Shaquille Griffin's that guy that can easily run with the guy down the field. Coming over from Seattle, maybe he hasn't been playing as well as back in his heyday, but he's still only 27 years old. Nice young guy to match up with Tyson Campbell, and
That's
your main
Campbell's.
third guy is going to be Darius Williams, who also gets brought over on a 3-year, $30 million contract. 29 years old, coming over from the Rams. He was super solid opposite of Jalen Ramsey. This is your shorter guy at 5'9" to cover a slot receiver maybe and be a little bit quicker on his feet and quicker with his hands and match up over the middle of the field where your Tyson Campbell and your Shaquille Griffins are more your outside corners that are going to be worried about getting vertical and covering jump balls, stuff like that. So this should be a solid group. But I'd like to hear your guys' opinions. So Prillo, what do we think about the top three corners here? For the Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, I love Shaquille Griffin. Obviously, he's a great athlete. I mean, you kind of mentioned he's that outside corner. You're not really worried about your number one wide receiver. I mean, yeah, your number one wide receiver getting long on him because obviously he has a great speed and he's 6 feet tall. So obviously he's got some length on him. So you're obviously not worried about that vertical. I mean, the guy that I do want to talk about is Darius Williams. I'll talk about Tyson Campbell actually real quick. I don't really know much about him, so I'm not gonna go too much in detail. But obviously he has that size that you're looking for as a corner. So I mean, he just looks like a pretty good prospect for the the Jacksonville Jaguars. But Darius Williams, when you're on a team with Jalen Ramsey, you're really looking like you're going to get targeted because no one's really going to want to force the ball to Jalen Ramsey. So for Darius Williams to have decent stats, obviously opposite side of Jalen Ramsey, it's pretty amazing, and that just shows that the Jaguars brought in a kind of like an under the radar type of guy in Darius Williams because you talked about him being the third corner. Obviously, that's probably where he's going to sit at, being the smaller guy, being that nickel corner. But if you're able to play opposite side of Jalen Ramsey and get targeted a lot during a game, obviously that shows that you're a great corner in the NFL.
Yeah, these guys, none of them are maybe your shutdown number one that you're going to match up against the other team's number one receiver week in and week out. But I think Tyson Campbell definitely has the what am I trying to call it? The potential
No,
to become that. And
Tyson Campbell had a very good second half of the season. First half was very bad. Like there's no denying that. The second half, he recovered greatly and like he looked like he could actually be elite.
yeah, I think your floor with this group is having three, starting caliber guys, and your ceiling is having, you know, a superstar in Tyson Campbell and two guys that are, above average starters. So this is
I
definitely going
mean,
to be a
yeah, I
strong
mean,
point of this defense.
as much as it pains me, because I hate giving Priller anything with the fucking Seahawks. Shaquille Griffin's fucking good. He is amazing. I hate the Seahawks just because of this little fucker in this group chat, but Shaquille Griffin's fucking amazing. So is Russell Wilson. Fuck you. Yeah.
Okay, let's stay on corners here for the Jaguars. Um, But yeah, I think this will be a solid group. You got a couple other guys in rotation too. Chris Claybrooks and Trey Herndon are probably going to be your main two guys off the bench. Um, but you got your main three guys that are going to be playing the majority of the time, and they're all super, super solid guys that are going to be a strong suit of this defensive unit.
I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
yeah. I'll let you go, Macho.
yeah. So basically, yeah, no. Our secondary is I would actually consider it our strongest point. Our secondary is very good. Not very. It's good. It gets the job done. So Rayshawn Jenkins is a solid safety, and the surprising part has been Andre Cisco this year. I had very high hopes for him. So when we were playing it was a preseason game. He did exactly what I want a strong safety to do. When they get past the secondary, when they get past the middle linebackers, not the secondary, but when they get past the middle linebackers, Andre Cisco was always there to make sure he gets tackled. He was always right there to make sure like this is not going to be a bigger play. And that's exactly what I want out of free safety. I don't know about you guys, but I want my free safety to keep the plays like affordable.
Yeah, he's your last line of defense to sit back. So yeah, we'll jump into the safeties now. Rayshawn Jenkins and Andre Cisco are probably going to be your two starters here. Andre Cisco, like Macho said, is going to be your free safety back deep. Third round pick last year in
Yeah,
2021, 22 years old out
which
of Syracuse.
he's a surprise. Andre Cisco is a surprise. Everyone was expecting Andrew Wingard, and Andre Cisco has outperformed everyone because they're worried about he's Andre Cisco is not very good in coverage, but when it comes to pursuit, he's very fucking good. He's able to catch the runner, and he's able to tackle him and like to save big plays.
Yeah, I think he's going to be probably your early down guy. When you think the other team's going to run the ball, and then maybe Andrew Wingard comes in as gets the third down to be more of your coverage guy, or you could see a guy like Daniel Thomas. But Andre Cisco will be super solid in run defense and pursuit and keeping everything in front of him. He'll be your last line of defense. So, great to have a guy like that on your team. And then Rayshawn Jenkins will be a little bit more of your box safety, who'll be doing a little bit in the run game, a little bit in the pass game. He's still, in his prime right now, 28 years old. He played 4 seasons with the Chargers, and now he's come over this past season with the Jacksonville Jaguars and had a pretty good season in 2021. So you're looking for him to, even get an even better season going with these other safeties. But this group should be a little bit of a rotation as well, having, Jenkins, Cisco, Wingard, and Thomas all kind of getting their own playing time in their own aspect. So Priller, what
I
do you
mean,
think about the safety group here in Jacksonville? And do you think it's going to be a rotation like I'm kind of saying, or you think there's like your prototypical 1 and 2 free safety, strong safety?
You know, kind of Mancho was mentioning, I do like these kind of under the radar players like he was mentioning, the Cisco, but I do see them being more of like a rotational group, like how you kind of said. And I do kind of what Macho touched on. I don't really agree with them having really a strong suit in this like defensive back category as much as they do in the defensive ends and like D line type of category. But I don't think you're upset with what you got. I think they're a pretty solid group down here in your back as your backs. So yeah.
I think the corners are definitely super, super strong here, and I think maybe your safeties aren't at that caliber, but with the rotation it should be pretty solid. But yeah, I think maybe not the defensive backs as a whole being a strong suit, but the corners, your cornerbacks are going to be probably the strongest point of your entire team here.
no, I 100% agree with that. Like, I mean, Priller hit it best. Like, our corners are gonna be like, I mean, obviously, like he's a Shaquille Griffin guy. I mean, that's the one thing that we can connect on. Obviously, is he's a fucking Seahawks fan. I'm a Jaguars fan. I mean, we're the farthest teams apart. Like, he's northeast, or he's northwest. I'm southeast, and Shaquille Griffin like has been nothing but phenomenal. And our safeties have they proven themselves. They actually have been great. It's been surprising out of nowhere. But yeah, no, like it's just been like nothing else more. Like Shaquille Griffin, I don't remember him on the Seahawks, but I remember him on the Jaguars. He's been phenomenal. I don't know. I mean, Priller, like you can add to this. Like I don't remember how good Shaquille Griffin was.
Yeah, I mean he was a great corner. Obviously, it was sad to see him leave, but obviously you've seen that how much he got paid. He was a great corner, and obviously he got his bag that what he deserved. And so
I mean,
I think
his hometown is South Florida. That's
yeah,
where.
I think it kind of just shows. I mean, if you're able to get paid that much as a corner in this league, that kind of shows what kind of corner you are. Obviously, you got a guy that you knew what to expect from him. I mean,
He's
he's been in the
almost his
league for
loyal family. And like his brother Shaquem, like he wanted to stay in South Florida, close to his family. I mean, he went to UCF. He wanted to stay like close to Florida. It's just what he wants to do.
Yeah, and I think with him being 27 years old, you kind of knew what you were getting out of him. You were getting a corner that was going to be pretty solid. So I think that's what the Jaguars signed him for. So yeah, overall, he was a great corner, and I have nothing really bad to say about him. Otherwise, I would.
All right.
Surprising Seahawks fan.
Well, to wrap up the defense, I think we talked about it up and down. I think the run defense is going to be a strong suit. I think off the edge, you're looking for your two young guys to really pull it together, and you know what you're getting out of Josh Allen, but hopefully that other side can get it going. But I think interior, your run defense is going to be great, and you know if those edge rushers can get it going, your pass rush should be phenomenal as well. The linebackers, we'll see how the two of them can work together. I don't see any reason they can't be great. Corners should be the strong suit of this entire team as a whole, and you know your safeties should be getting the job done. So defensively, maybe not the best defense in the league, maybe not anything too crazy, maybe no like superstar players, but there's talent all over the place, spread out, and this should be a decent unit. So
Oh no, they have very high potential, but
yeah,
like
for
they'll.
sure, this is a young team up and down. The whole roster's young. So to wrap things up, we'll hop into special teams, who I know Macho's getting a little bit excited
Oh,
here. Um,
let's go, Logan Cook, baby. Hey, no, fuck you, Mike. I'm getting Logan Cook. So Logan Cook, let me tell you, this fucker has been unrated by the NFL this entire fucking career. You know, I think he's a Florida State.
Mississippi
Let me
State,
do a little research right now.
Okay, I'll hop in with the kickers
He's a
then.
Mississippi State dude.
So
He's our punter, but he's consistently been one of the best punters in the NFL, put in the 20s, but he's been underrated every fucking time. Logan Cook is great at punting the ball. I mean, that's basic as it gets. But he's a big body who's able to handle the ball. Obviously, like our kicker, like we don't have a good we have an awful kicker now because I mean our last kicker was Josh Lambo who was phenomenal, but Urban Meyer's a psychopath and he kicked him in the leg. But yeah, no, Logan Cook has consistently put it in the 20-yard line. He's able to get the job done. Logan Cook is fucking amazing. He's like special teams is the most underrated part of football, and it really is an important part. Like Jamal Agnew is a great return. Like he's a top. I'll say it right now. He's a top three returner. Jamal Agnew is a great returner, and the fact that you paired up with Logan Cook, and it used to be Josh Lambo, but Josh Lambo's gone, sadly. I mean, it was great special teams. The one thing that I appreciate Urban Meyer for was special teams. He focused on special teams and he got done. Even though it did put a lot of holes, like obviously we paid way more than we should have for Jamal Agnew and Rayshon Jenkins.
all right, well, to hop in, the kickers are going to be interesting. We don't really know who's going to be your number one guy right now. You have Ryan Santoso and Elliott Fry, who neither one of them have really seen a ton of action in the NFL.
No, we
So
are not going to have a very good kicker this year. That's a fact.
yeah, it's
I
definitely
mean,
going to be a weak point of the team is the kicker position. You know, both of these guys that I mentioned, Santoso's played, with three different teams, Tennessee, Carolina, and Detroit in 2019, 2021, and again in 2021. And the most games he's played in a season is 3 games, so he hasn't got a ton of action. And then Elliott Fry this past season played 1 game with the Chiefs, 1 game with the Bengals, and in 2020 played 1 game with the Falcons. So none of these guys have much, NFL. What am I trying to say? Game time. So we'll see how it goes, but we don't really know a lot about these kickers. We know that they aren't great, obviously, because they aren't really in the NFL, but we'll see what they're capable of. But this should be a weak point here at the kicker spot. Macho touched on Logan Cook being a top tier punter, though. That should be a very good, aspect of the special teams unit. And then Jamal Agnew being an unbelievable returner. I'll let Priller go into that. Priller's our return specialist, I think. So, Priller, what do you think about Jamal Agnew? What are your thoughts on him?
I liked him as a returner. Obviously, I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. Macho had a really explosive touchdown actually this last season with the Jaguars. Obviously, that was kind of one really very exciting play that made on I think a lot of highlight reels. But yeah, obviously Jamal Agnew, we kind of touched on him in the wide receiver. Obviously, he's just kind of your special teams guy. I mean, he's not nothing really else. I mean, he's just there, fast guy. Obviously, is very explosive when he gets the ball in his hand. I think that's why the Jaguars have him on their team. And so yeah, I think him being a special teamer is kind of a very important aspect to this team.
All right, well, Macho, if you have no other points to make about the special teams, we'll do a quick wrap up of what we think, the 2022 Jaguars will look like. So, um, offensively, this should be a young team that maybe has to work things out the first couple weeks, find out who's going to be getting a lot of playing time, who's going to be starting where. But I think overall, they'll improve as the season goes on. And then defensively, a similar situation, especially on the edge. You kind of have a little bit of an unknown on one side with Trayvon Walker. You're hoping he can get up to his potential, but the run defense should be super solid. The linebackers should be pretty good, and then your corners are obviously the strong point of this entire team, in my opinion. And then your safeties are going to be pretty serviceable, get the job done. And like we said, special teams, kicker's not great, punter's great, returner's great. So overall, this team will probably struggle in a loaded AFC. Like Macho said, this year playing the AFC West is going to be tough. Now, the division isn't great, but I do think that this team ends up probably third in the division behind the Colts and the Titans. I think they got a better roster than the Texans, so I think it's fair to say that they'll outplay them. But I uh, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't think this team will be, out of the bottom 10, the bottom 15 teams in the league here overall.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's perfect way to say it. I think yeah, with their hard schedule that they got coming up here, and they're such a young team. Honestly, don't see them doing very well. Obviously, finishing probably third in their division with their two front runners, the Colts and the Titans. I feel like those two are pretty solid ass teams. Um, but I think nonetheless, this team is very young, even though they might not win as many games. I think this is going to be a very nice team to watch and a nice team to watch in the upcoming seasons because they're very young. So I think that this will be an exciting, obviously, very exciting team.
Yeah, and Macho, what are your thoughts looking forward to 2022 of the whole team together?
I think I'm gonna be honest. I think Macho got disconnected, so I think we're just gonna have to wrap this one up without him.
Well, that is unfortunate. Okay, well, on behalf of our special guest Macho, and my co-host Jack Priller. Thank you so much for listening to our, episode of this podcast of the 2022 Jaguars. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back with another episode. We'll be going through every, team in the NFL up until the beginning of the season. So stay tuned. We'll be releasing more episodes shortly. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.